Marcus Johnson checked his watch as he walked through the bustling airport terminal. He was 2 hours early for his flight from Chicago to San Francisco. Being early was a habit he developed years ago when he started Horizon Innovations. Now that his company was worth $500 million, that habit hadn't changed. He wore a navy blue suit that fit his tall frame perfectly. His shoes were polished and his briefcase contained his laptop and important documents for tomorrow's meeting with investors. At 42 years old, Marcus had the confident walk of someone who knew his value in the world. Marcus showed his boarding pass and ID to the gate agent, who smiled and wished him a pleasant flight. He was the third person to board the plane. The flight attendants greeted him warmly as he made his way to seat 2A in first class. He stored his briefcase in the overhead compartment, keeping only his tablet to review his presentation during the flight. "Would you like something to drink before takeoff, sir?" asked a flight attendant named Danielle Wright. She had a kind smile and professional demeanor. "Just water, please," Marcus replied. He settled into his seat, put on his reading glasses, and opened his tablet. The next 4 hours would be valuable time to perfect his pitch to the venture capital firm that might invest another $50 million in Horizon's new software platform. The cabin slowly filled with other passengers. Marcus barely noticed as he focused on his work, occasionally sipping his water. First class was almost full when he heard a commotion near the front of the cabin. "Excuse me, but there must be some mistake," a woman's voice said loudly. "I always sit in 2A. I fly this route every month." Marcus looked up to see a white woman in her 50s with blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore expensive clothes and jewelry that sparkled under the cabin lights. She was showing her boarding pass to Danielle while pointing directly at Marcus's seat. "I'm sorry, Ms. Miller, but your assigned seat for today's flight is 5C, Danielle explained calmly, showing the woman her boarding pass. "This is unacceptable," Patricia Miller insisted, her voice growing louder. "I'm a platinum member. I specifically request this seat for every flight. Someone has made a terrible mistake." Several passengers were now watching the scene unfold. Marcus returned to his tablet, assuming the flight attendant would handle the situation. He had dealt with entitled behavior before and preferred not to get involved. "Ms. Miller, please take your assigned seat. We need to finish boarding," Danielle said firmly. "No, I want to speak to the captain." "This is my seat," Patricia insisted, crossing her arms. Marcus felt the woman's eyes on him. He looked up again and was met with a cold stare, as if he was the problem. He had experienced that look many times in his life, particularly when he was in spaces where black men like him weren't expected to be. Danielle seemed uncomfortable as she approached Marcus. "Sir, I apologize for the disturbance. Would you mind moving to another seat in first class to resolve this situation? Ms. Miller is a frequent flyer with our airline." Marcus was surprised by the request. "I'm sorry, but I booked this seat weeks ago. I need the window seat to work during the flight. I have an important meeting tomorrow." Danielle's smile tightened. "I understand, sir, but perhaps we could find you another window seat?" "All the other window seats in first class are taken," Marcus pointed out, gesturing to the now full cabin. "My boarding pass clearly shows I'm assigned to 2A and I'd like to stay in my assigned seat." Patricia Miller huffed loudly. "This is ridiculous. I've been a loyal customer for 15 years. I should not have to argue about this." Danielle walked back to Patricia and spoke quietly, but Patricia shook her head firmly. The situation was quickly becoming uncomfortable for everyone nearby. A few minutes later, an older flight attendant with a name tag reading Kevin Phillips approached. He had the stern look of someone used to solving problems. "What seems to be the issue here?" Kevin asked. Danielle explained the situation quietly. Kevin listened, and then looked between Marcus and Patricia. He made his decision quickly. "Sir," he said, addressing Marcus, "we have a seating misunderstanding that's delaying our departure. Would you mind moving to accommodate Ms. Miller?" Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "There's no misunderstanding. My boarding pass says 2A and I'm sitting in 2A. Ms. Miller's pass shows a different seat." Kevin's expression hardened. "Sir, we're trying to resolve the situation amicably." "So am I," Marcus replied calmly. "By sitting in my assigned seat and allowing the flight to depart on time. The tension in the air thickened. Several passengers were openly watching now. Marcus noticed a young Latina woman in the row behind him looking concerned. "One moment, please," Kevin said. He walked to the front of the plane and picked up a phone, speaking quietly. Marcus returned to his tablet, though he found it hard to focus. This was not the first time he had faced such a situation, but it was particularly frustrating given how important this trip was. 5 minutes later, the captain emerged from the cockpit. He was a tall white man with gray hair at his temples and 4 stripes on his uniform. His name tag read, Captain Richard Bennett. The captain spoke briefly with Kevin and Danielle, occasionally glancing at Marcus. Then he approached Marcus's seat. "Sir, I understand there's a seating issue," Captain Bennett said. "There's no issue with the seating," Marcus replied evenly. "There's an issue with someone wanting my seat despite not being assigned to it." The captain nodded slowly. "I see. Well, for the comfort of all our passengers and to avoid further delay, I'm going to have to ask you to deplane and take a later flight. We'll fully compensate you, of course." Marcus stared at the captain in disbelief. "You're asking me to leave the plane because another passenger wants my seat?" "I'm asking you to help us resolve a situation that's delaying departure," the captain said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request but an order. Marcus looked around. Most passengers were avoiding eye contact except for the Latina woman behind him, who looked troubled by what was happening. Patricia Miller stood nearby with a satisfied expression. "This is wrong," Marcus said quietly. "And we both know why this is happening." The captain's expression didn't change. "Sir, please gather your belongings. A gate agent will assist you with rebooking." Marcus felt a familiar mixture of anger and resignation. He had built a successful company, earned millions of dollars, and yet still faced moments like this. He slowly put his tablet in his suit pocket and stood up. As he reached for his briefcase in the overhead bin, he noticed the Latina woman discreetly holding her phone, its camera pointed in his direction. Their eyes met briefly, and she gave him a small nod. Marcus walked down the aisle with his head held high. He could feel everyone watching him. Some passengers looked uncomfortable, others curious. A few seemed to avoid looking at him altogether. He stepped off the plane. He heard Patricia Miller's voice behind him. "Thank you for resolving this. I knew there must have been a mistake." The gate agent looked confused when Marcus appeared in the jetway. "Sir, is everything okay?" she asked. "No," Marcus said. "Everything is not okay. I was just removed from the plane so another passenger could have my seat." The agent's eyes widened. "I don't understand. Let me call my supervisor." While waiting for the supervisor, Marcus called his executive assistant, Jamal Williams. "I'm going to be late," Marcus explained. "Book me on the next flight to San Francisco, any airline except Skyward." "What happened?" Jamal asked. "I'll explain later," Marcus said. "Just make sure the investors know I might need to push our meeting back by a few hours." After hanging up, Marcus stood at the window and watched as Flight 372 pulled away from the gate. He thought about the important meeting he might now miss, the disrespect he had just experienced, and the all-too-familiar feeling of being seen as someone who didn't belong. What Marcus didn't know was that the video being taken by Lisa Rodriguez was about to change everything. Not just for him, but for Skyward Airlines and corporate America's approach to racial bias. By this time tomorrow, the world would know his name, and Skyward Airlines would begin to understand the true cost of what had just happened. Lisa Rodriguez watched through the airplane window as Marcus Johnson walked back toward the terminal. She felt sick to her stomach. What she had just witnessed was clearly wrong. She looked down at her phone, checking to make sure the video had saved properly. It had captured everything. The captain asking Marcus to leave, the satisfied look on Patricia Miller's face as she took his seat, and Marcus's dignified exit despite the humiliation. Lisa was a marketing manager for a clothing company in San Francisco. She traveled often for work and had seen bad behavior on planes before, but nothing like this. As the plane took off, she watched Patricia settle comfortably into seat 2A, acting as if nothing unusual had happened. "Can you believe that?" whispered the man sitting next to Lisa. His name tag identified him as Alan Foster, a sales representative for a pharmaceutical company. It was completely unfair, Lisa replied quietly. He had the right seat assignment. I've been flying for 20 years and never seen anything like it, Alan said. That woman just didn't want to sit next to... He didn't finish his sentence, but Lisa knew what he meant. Several other passengers nearby were having similar quiet conversations, their expressions showing discomfort with what they had witnessed. Lisa opened her social media app and began typing a caption for the video. Just witnessed a black CEO forced off Skyward Airline so a white woman could take his seat. First-class ticket, first-class racism. She hesitated before pressing post, wondering if she should get involved. Then she remembered the look on Marcus's face. The controlled anger, the dignity despite the injustice. She hit the share button. The 4-hour flight to San Francisco felt longer than usual. Lisa couldn't focus on her book or the movie playing on the screen in front of her. She kept thinking about the incident and checking her phone whenever the plane's Wi-Fi allowed. By the time they landed in San Francisco, her post had already been shared over 5,000 times. Comments were pouring in, with many people tagging Skyward Airlines and demanding an explanation. Some people were sharing their own stories of discrimination on flights. While waiting for her luggage, Lisa's phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Ms. Rodriguez? This is Claire Davis from the Morning News Network. We saw your video of the incident on the Skyward flight today. Would you be willing to talk to us about what you witnessed?" Lisa was surprised. She hadn't expected things to move so quickly. Yes, I suppose so." "Great. We'd like to interview you tomorrow morning if possible. The video is gaining traction, and we want to cover the story." After agreeing to the interview, Lisa checked her social media again. The video had now been viewed over 100,000 times and was still spreading rapidly. Someone had identified the man as Marcus Johnson, CEO of Horizon Innovations. People were calling for boycotts of Skyward Airlines, and the company's social media accounts were being flooded with angry comments. Meanwhile, Marcus Johnson had finally arrived in San Francisco on a different airline. As he turned on his phone, after landing, it immediately began buzzing with notifications. There were missed calls from his assistant Jamal, his public relations director Kelly Bennett, and numerous numbers he didn't recognize. He called Jamal first. "What's going on? I just landed." "Marcus, you're all over social media," Jamal explained quickly. "Someone on the flight recorded you being removed and posted it online. It's gone viral. News networks are trying to reach you for comment." Marcus was stunned. "How viral are we talking about?" "Millions of views in just a few hours. A boycott Skyward is trending. People are outraged on your behalf." Marcus sat down in the airport lounge trying to process this information. He had planned to put the incident behind him and focus on tomorrow's meeting. Now it seemed the whole country was talking about what had happened to him. "Kelly wants to know how you want to handle this," Jamal continued. "The Morning News Network, National News Today, and 3 other major networks want interviews." Marcus thought carefully. He had always been private about his experiences with racism, preferring to let his success speak for itself. But maybe this was an opportunity to address a larger issue. "Tell Kelly to set up one interview, the Morning News Network, for tomorrow. But first, I need to see this video." Jamal sent him the link. Marcus watched the short clip that showed his removal from the plane. The video didn't show the entire interaction, but it clearly captured the captain asking him to leave while Patricia Miller waited to take his seat. The caption and comments made it clear how viewers were interpreting the incident. By midnight, Skyward Airlines had issued a brief statement. "We are aware of a video circulating on social media regarding an incident on Flight 372. We take these matters seriously and are investigating this customer service issue. Skyward Airlines is committed to treating all passengers with respect." This vague response only fueled more anger online. People were pointing out that the airline hadn't apologized or acknowledged what was clearly visible in the video. Back at his hotel, Marcus prepared for his investor meeting while fielding calls from friends and family who had seen the video. His sister Maya called, her voice tight with anger. I can't believe they did that to you, Marcus. Are you okay? I'm fine, he assured her. Just focused on my meeting tomorrow. People need to know about this. You've worked too hard to be treated that way. I've agreed to one interview, Marcus told her. We'll see what happens. While Marcus slept, the story continued to spread. Celebrities began sharing the video and commenting on it. Civil rights organizations issued statements condemning Skyward Airlines. By morning, the video had been viewed 12 million times. Lisa Rodriguez appeared on the morning news network's early show, describing what she had witnessed. It was clearly discriminatory, she told the interviewer. Mr. Johnson was polite and had the correct seat assignment. There was no reason to remove him from the plane except that this woman didn't want to sit where she was assigned, and for some reason, the airline staff chose to accommodate her demands at his expense. The reporter asked, "Did anyone on the plane object to what was happening?" Lisa looked down. "No. We all just watched it happen. I think many of us knew it was wrong, but no one spoke up. That's why I posted the video. Someone needed to say something." At Skyward Airlines headquarters, CEO Gregory Barnes called an emergency meeting with his executive team. The company's stock had dropped 5% in pre-market trading, and the social media team reported that negative mentions had increased by 3,000% overnight. "How bad is this going to get?" Gregory asked his chief communications officer, Ben Harris. "Bad," Ben replied bluntly. "The video is clear. Our staff removed a black passenger who had the correct seat assignment to accommodate a white passenger who didn't. There's no way to spin this." "We need to issue a better statement," said Samantha Powell, the chief marketing officer. The one from last night made things worse. As they debated their response, Marcus Johnson appeared live on the morning news network. He sat calmly in the studio, dressed in another impeccable suit. The interviewer asked him to describe what had happened. Marcus spoke clearly and without emotion, recounting the events exactly as they had occurred. He didn't speculate about motives or make accusations. He simply told the truth. "This isn't just about a seat on a plane," he concluded. "It's about the assumption that I didn't belong there, despite all evidence to the contrary. It's about whose comfort was prioritized and whose was disregarded. And that's something that happens to black people and other minorities every day, in situations big and small." The interviewer asked, "What do you want Skyward Airlines to do about this?" Marcus looked directly into the camera. "I want them to acknowledge what happened. I want them to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. And I want everyone watching to think about the small moments of injustice they witness and what they do about them. Because silence is its own kind of action." By the time the interview ended, Skyward Airlines stock had fallen 10%, and the company was facing a crisis that would soon cost them billions. The morning after Marcus Johnson's interview, the financial impact on Skyward Airlines became clear. As markets opened, investors began selling their shares rapidly. The stock price, which had closed at $87.50 the previous day, opened at $78.25 and continued to fall. Inside Skyward's headquarters in Atlanta, CEO Gregory Barnes stared at the stock ticker on his computer screen with growing alarm. In just 30 minutes, the company had lost over $400 million in market value. His phone rang constantly with calls from board members demanding action. "Get everyone in the conference room now," Gregory told his assistant. "And I mean everyone. Legal, PR, marketing, operations, HR, everyone." 20 minutes later, the large conference room was filled with anxious executives. The tension in the air was thick as Gregory entered the room. "This is a crisis," he began without preamble. "Our stock is in free fall. Customers are canceling flights. We need solutions, not excuses." Samantha Powell, the chief marketing officer, raised her hand. "We've been monitoring social media and customer feedback channels. Cancellations are up 340% since yesterday. The hashtag #boycott Skyward has been used over 2 million times." "What about our statement from last night?" Gregory asked. Ben Harris, the chief communications officer, shifted uncomfortably. "It made things worse. People are calling it dismissive and tone-deaf. We need to issue a real apology and announce concrete actions." "An apology admits guilt," cautioned Linda Morgan, the head of legal. That could expose us to lawsuits. We're already exposed. Gregory slammed his hand on the table. There's a video being watched by millions of people that shows our staff removing a black CEO from his rightful seat to give it to a white woman. The damage is done. The room fell silent. On the wall-mounted screen, the stock price continued to drop. It was now at $72.30. We need to reach out to Marcus Johnson directly, said Charles Reed, the chief operations officer. Maybe we can resolve this privately. He's already gone public, Ben pointed out. And frankly, he was remarkably measured in his interview. He could have been much harsher. What about the staff involved? Asked Maria Gonzalez from Human Resources. The flight attendants and the captain? We've identified them, Charles replied. They're all veteran employees with good records. They claim they were just trying to resolve a conflict and get the plane off the ground on time. By removing the passenger who was in the right? Gregory asked incredulously. They say it wasn't about race, Maria explained. Patricia Miller is a platinum member who flies with us weekly and always requests that specific seat. They were trying to accommodate a loyal customer. At the expense of another customer who had the correct seat assignment, Gregory pointed out. And now it's costing us millions by the minute. The meeting continued for hours as they debated their response. By lunchtime, competing airlines began subtly positioning themselves as more inclusive alternatives. Delta Airlines announced an immediate review of their diversity training programs. Southwest highlighted their long-standing community initiatives on social media. Meanwhile, Marcus Johnson was meeting with potential investors in San Francisco. Despite the media storm surrounding him, he remained focused on securing funding for Horizon Innovation's new software platform. The meeting was going well until one of the investors checked his phone and let out a low whistle. Your airline incident is crushing Skyward's stock, he told Marcus. They've lost over $1 billion in market value today. Marcus was surprised by the scale of the backlash. That wasn't my intention, he said. Intention or not, you've got enormous leverage right now, the investor replied. If I were you, I'd use it. After the meeting, which ended with a tentative agreement for $60 million in funding, Marcus met with his public relations director, Kelly Bennett. She was a sharp-minded woman in her 30s who had helped shape Horizon's public image for the past 5 years. Skyward's CEO wants to meet with you, Kelly informed him. They're in damage control mode. What do they want? Marcus asked. Probably to offer you free flights for life and hope you'll tell everyone how much you love their airline, Kelly said with a hint of sarcasm. But you have a rare opportunity here, Marcus. You could push for real change. Marcus nodded slowly. Set up the meeting, but not at their headquarters. They can come to us. By the end of the trading day, Skyward Airlines had lost $1.2 billion in market value. After the markets closed, the company released a second statement acknowledging that Marcus had been improperly removed from the flight, but stopping short of admitting racial bias played a role. The statement promised a thorough review of their policies. This half-apology only made things worse. On evening news programs, commentators and analysts criticized the airline's response as inadequate. Boycott calls intensified. Celebrities, with large social media followings, announced they would no longer fly with Skyward. The next morning, Skyward's stock opened even lower. By midday, the total loss in market value approached $2 billion. Gregory Barnes knew they needed to take more dramatic action. We need to settle this now, he told his executive team. Whatever it takes. That afternoon, Gregory and 2 other Skyward executives arrived at Horizon Innovation's San Francisco office for a meeting with Marcus Johnson. The contrast between the 2 CEOs was striking. Gregory looked haggard and stressed, while Marcus appeared calm and composed. Thank you for meeting with us, Mr. Johnson, Gregory began. First, I want to personally apologize for the treatment you received on our flight. Marcus nodded but said nothing, waiting for Gregory to continue. We want to make this right, Gregory said. We're prepared to offer you compensation and lifetime platinum status with our airline. I'm not interested in free flights, Marcus replied evenly. And this isn't about me personally. It's about a pattern of behavior that affects many people. who don't have the platform I have. Gregory shifted uncomfortably. What are you looking for? Accountability and real change, Marcus said. The flight attendants and captain who removed me should be held responsible for their actions. Your company needs comprehensive bias training for all staff, and you need to fund an initiative to address racial bias in customer service across industries. That sounds expensive, one of the other executives muttered. Not as expensive as losing another $1 billion in market value, Marcus pointed out. Your stock is still falling as we speak. The negotiation continued for 2 hours. Marcus remained firm in his demands, knowing he had unusual leverage in this situation. By the end of the meeting, they had the outline of an agreement. As Gregory was leaving, he paused at the door. You know, Ms. Miller has been a customer for 15 years. She flies with us every week. And that justified removing me from my assigned seat? Marcus asked. Gregory shook his head slowly. No, it didn't. That's the problem. Our staff valued her comfort over your rights. We need to fix that. After the Skyward executives left, Kelly joined Marcus in his office. How did it go? They agreed to everything, Marcus told her. They're going to fire the staff involved, implement new training, and fund a $20 million initiative to combat racial bias in customer service. That's incredible, Kelly said. Will you make a statement supporting them now? Marcus thought for a moment. No. I want to see the agreement in writing first, and I want to see real action. Words are easy. Change is hard. That evening, news of the upcoming joint press conference between Skyward Airlines and Marcus Johnson leaked to the media. The stock price stabilized slightly in after-hours trading, but the damage was severe. In just 2 days, Skyward Airlines had lost $2.5 billion in market value. Patricia Miller, who had remained silent since the incident, was identified by social media users who recognized her from the video. Her employer, a large insurance company, was receiving calls demanding her termination. She had deleted all her social media accounts and was not responding to requests for comment. As Marcus prepared for bed that night, he received a text from his sister Maya. You're turning this terrible experience into something meaningful. I'm proud of you. Marcus smiled slightly. The incident had been humiliating and unjust, but perhaps some good would come from it after all. 3 days after the incident, reporters and camera crews gathered outside Skyward Airlines headquarters in Atlanta. The joint press conference between Skyward CEO Gregory Barnes and Marcus Johnson was scheduled for 10 a.m. News vans lined the street and journalists checked their equipment while speculating about what would be announced. Inside the building, Gregory paced nervously in his office. His phone buzzed with a message from the board chairman. Stock down another 4% this morning. Fix this today. The pressure was enormous. In just 3 days, Skyward Airlines had lost $2.5 billion in market value. Customers were canceling flights and credit card partnerships. Travel agencies were steering clients toward other airlines. The company's future was at stake. Gregory adjusted his tie and rehearsed his statement one more time. The lawyers had gone over every word carefully. It was a difficult balance, acknowledging wrongdoing while limiting legal exposure. But Marcus Johnson had been clear. Anything less than a full admission of racial bias would not be acceptable. At 9:45 a.m., Marcus arrived at Skyward headquarters. He was accompanied by Kelly Bennett, his PR director, and William Odom, his attorney. The security team escorted them to a small conference room near the press area. Gregory greeted them with a forced smile. Mr. Johnson, thank you for coming. We're ready whenever you are. Marcus nodded. Let me see the final statement. Gregory handed him a printed copy. Marcus read it carefully, then looked up. This is acceptable. Let's proceed. At 10 a.m. exactly, Gregory and Marcus walked onto the small stage set up for the press conference. Cameras flashed and reporters leaned forward in anticipation. Gregory stepped to the microphone first, his face solemn. Good morning. 3 days ago, an incident occurred on Skyward Airlines Flight 372 from Chicago to San Francisco that violated our core values and damaged the trust of our customers. After a thorough investigation, we have determined that Mr. Marcus Johnson was removed from our flight due to racial bias exhibited by our staff. A murmur ran through the crowd of reporters. Gregory continued, visibly uncomfortable but pushing through. This is inexcusable. We have terminated the employment of the flight attendants and captain involved in this incident. Skyward Airlines acknowledges that our employees' actions were wrong and discriminatory. We are implementing comprehensive changes to our training and policies to ensure nothing like this happens again. Gregory then announced a series of changes. Mandatory bias training for all 20,000 Skyward employees, a review of all customer service protocols, the creation of a Chief Diversity Officer position reporting directly to the CEO, and a partnership with civil rights organizations to develop new industry standards. Finally, Gregory said, Skyward Airlines has agreed to fund a $20 million initiative to combat racial bias in customer service across industries. This initiative will be administered by a nonprofit organization of Mr. Johnson's choosing. He stepped back and Marcus approached the microphone. The room fell silent. Thank you, Mr. Barnes, Marcus began. What happened to me on that flight was not an isolated incident. It's part of a pattern that many people of color experience daily. The assumption that we don't belong in certain spaces, despite all evidence to the contrary. Marcus spoke calmly, his words measured but powerful. I appreciate Skyward Airlines' acknowledgement of what occurred and their commitment to meaningful change. The $20 million initiative will fund research, training, and advocacy to address racial bias in customer service settings, not just in airlines but in retail, hospitality, banking, and healthcare. He continued, This isn't about getting special treatment. It's about getting equal treatment. It's about being respected as a customer and as a human being, regardless of race. After the formal statements, reporters shouted questions. One asked if Marcus would fly with Skyward again. I'll be watching their actions closely, he replied diplomatically. Real change takes time and consistent effort. I hope Skyward becomes a model for the industry. Another reporter asked about Patricia Miller, the woman who had taken his seat. This isn't about one individual, Marcus said. It's about systems and biases that need to be addressed. I have no comment about Ms. Miller. Personally, the press conference lasted 30 minutes. When it ended, Gregory shook Marcus's hand for the cameras, both men maintaining professional smiles. Back in the private conference room, Gregory checked the company's stock price on his phone. It had stabilized somewhat after the announcement but was still down significantly from the previous week. Well, the bleeding has slowed, he told his executive team. Now we need to deliver on these promises. Marcus left the Skyward building shortly after, avoiding further questions from lingering reporters. In the car back to his hotel, Kelly showed him social media reactions to the press conference. It's mixed, she said. Many people are praising you for pushing for systemic change rather than just personal compensation. Others think Skyward got off too easily. The hashtag, #CarnTooLittleTooLate, was competing with Chartered Progress Not Perfect on trending lists. People were debating whether the response was adequate or just corporate damage control. We did what we could with the leverage we had, Marcus said. Now the real work begins. Later that day, Marcus received a call from Lisa Rodriguez, the woman who had recorded the video. She had been trying to reach him since the incident went viral. Mr. Johnson, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for what happened to you on that flight, she said. I hope it was okay that I recorded it. I felt like someone needed to document what was happening. You did the right thing, Marcus assured her. Without that video, this would have been just another story no one believed or cared about. You made it impossible to ignore. Will you really use the money to help others? Lisa asked. Absolutely, Marcus promised. My team is already working on establishing the nonprofit. We're calling it the Equal Space Initiative. It will work with companies to identify and address bias in customer interactions. Meanwhile, at Skyward's headquarters, Gregory met with his new crisis management team. The press conference had stopped the immediate bleeding, but the company's reputation had suffered severe damage. Recovery would take months, maybe years. We need to show immediate action, Gregory insisted. I want the new training program rolled out within 2 weeks. Find the best diversity consultants in the country. Money is no object. For the next week, Skyward Airlines worked frantically to implement the changes they had promised. The fired employees gave interviews to sympathetic media outlets, claiming they were scapegoats for a company-wide problem. Civil rights organizations monitored Skyward's progress, holding them accountable for their commitments. Patricia Miller, whose identity had been discovered despite early attempts to keep her name private, finally released a statement through her attorney. I deeply regret my role in this incident. I had no racial intentions, but I now understand how my actions contributed to a discriminatory outcome. I have reached out to Mr. Johnson privately to apologize. The statement was widely criticized as insufficient. Her employer placed her on administrative leave pending an internal investigation into her conduct. Marcus returned to San Francisco to finalize the investor deal for Horizon Innovations. The funding was now $75 million, up from the original $60 million offer. His handling of the Skyward incident had impressed the investors and raised his company's profile. You showed real leadership, the lead investor told him during the signing. You turned a personal injustice into a catalyst for change. That's exactly the kind of CEO we want to back. The incident had transformed Marcus from a successful but relatively unknown tech CEO to a prominent voice on corporate accountability and racial equity. Interview requests poured in from major publications and talk shows. Speaking invitations arrived from universities and business conferences. Kelly advised him to be selective. You're at risk of becoming known only for this incident rather than for your work at Horizon. Marcus agreed. He declined most interview requests, focusing instead on building the Equal Space Initiative. He hired a respected civil rights attorney to lead the nonprofit and assembled an advisory board of experts in bias training, corporate policy, and community advocacy. 2 weeks after the press conference, Skyward's stock had recovered about 30% of its lost value. The company announced its first round of bias training for all customer-facing employees. They also revealed that their new chief diversity officer would be Dr. Angela Wright, a well-respected expert who had previously advised Fortune 500 companies on inclusion initiatives. As Marcus reviewed the plans for the Equal Space Initiative, in his office he reflected on how a humiliating moment had led to an unexpected opportunity for impact. The incident on Flight 372 had been painful and unjust, but it had created a platform for change that might help many others facing similar discrimination. His assistant, Jamal, interrupted his thoughts. Your sister, Maya, is on line 1, and the lawyer for the nonprofit is waiting in the conference room with the incorporation papers. Marcus smiled. There was still much work to be done. 6 months after the incident on Flight 372, Marcus Johnson stood at a podium in a hotel ballroom in Chicago. Behind him was a large banner that read, Equal Space Initiative, Creating Fair Treatment for All. The room was filled with business leaders, civil rights advocates, journalists, and representatives from various industries including airlines, hotels, restaurants, and retail chains. Marcus had chosen Chicago for the official launch of his nonprofit organization. It felt right to return to the city where the incident had occurred, bringing his journey full circle. 6 months ago, I boarded a flight in this city, Marcus began. What happened next became a national conversation about race, respect, and corporate responsibility. Today, we turn that moment into a movement. The Equal Space Initiative was now fully operational with a staff of 15 professionals and an A office in San Francisco. The $20 million from Skyward Airlines had been used to create programs that would work with companies across travel, hospitality, and retail sectors to identify and address racial bias in customer interactions. Our mission is simple but ambitious, Marcus continued. We want to ensure that everyone receives equal treatment in public spaces and customer service settings, regardless of their race or appearance. In the front row sat Lisa Rodriguez, the woman whose video had sparked the national outcry. Marcus had hired her as the initiative's communications director, recognizing her courage in documenting the injustice she witnessed. Next to her was Dr. Angela Wright, who had left her position as Skyward's chief diversity officer after just 3 months, citing resistance to meaningful change. She now led the initiative's training programs. We've already partnered with 20 companies committed to examining their practices and implementing our recommendations, Marcus announced. And today, I'm pleased to share that 5 major hotel chains have agreed to adopt our customer service standards. The audience applauded. The initiative had developed a certification program that companies could earn by implementing specific policies, training programs, and accountability measures. The certification was becoming a valuable mark of commitment to equal treatment, with consumers increasingly looking for it when making choices about where to spend their money. After the presentation, Marcus mingled with attendees during the reception. A tall man in a gray suit approached him. It was Richard Bennett, the former captain of Flight 372, who had asked Marcus to leave the plane. "Mr. Johnson," Richard said nervously. "I wasn't sure if I should come today, but I wanted to apologize in person." Marcus was surprised to see him. "Captain Bennett." "Former captain," Richard corrected. "I was fired, as you know." Marcus nodded. "What are you doing now?" "I'm working as a flight instructor," Richard replied. "It's been a difficult 6 months. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened that day." "And what have you concluded?" Marcus asked. Richard looked uncomfortable but continued. "I made the wrong decision. I prioritized a white woman's comfort over a black man's rights. I didn't think of it that way at the time, but that's what it was. I've been taking classes on racial bias, trying to understand." Marcus appreciated the man's honesty. "That's a good start." "I'm not asking for forgiveness or for my job back," Richard said. "I just wanted you to know that your initiative is already making a difference. People are thinking differently, including me." Later that evening, Marcus had dinner with his sister Maya and his executive team from Horizon Innovations. The past 6 months had been transformative for his tech company as well. The publicity from the airline incident had raised his profile, leading to new partnerships and opportunities. Horizon's valuation had increased to $750 million, and they were now considering an initial public offering. "You've been running 2 companies," Maya observed. "Are you going to step back from one of them?" "Actually, I'm hiring a new COO for Horizon next month," Marcus replied. "I want to spend more time on the initiative. The tech world has plenty of brilliant leaders, but this work needs more voices and attention." Maya smiled proudly at her brother. From being kicked off a plane to changing how companies treat people, not bad for 6 months. The next morning, Marcus flew to Atlanta for a meeting with Gregory Barnes, the CEO of Skyward Airlines. This time he was treated very differently. The flight attendants recognized him immediately, addressing him with nervous deference. Other passengers whispered and pointed discreetly. Skyward Airlines had slowly begun to rebuild its reputation. Their stock had recovered about 60% of its lost value. The airline had implemented dramatic changes, making their bias training program a model for the industry. Their new advertisements subtly emphasized diversity and inclusion, without directly referencing the incident. Gregory greeted Marcus in his office with a firm handshake. "Thank you for coming. I wanted to show you what we've accomplished." He presented Marcus with a detailed report of the changes Skyward had made. Revised seating policies that eliminated preferential treatment for frequent flyers when it conflicted with assigned seating, comprehensive training for all 20,000 employees, new hiring practices that had increased diversity in management by 22%, and a customer feedback system specifically designed to identify potential bias incidents. "We're still working on it," Gregory admitted. "Changing a corporate culture takes time." Marcus reviewed the report carefully. "This is good progress. But the real test is what happens on your planes every day. Our customer satisfaction scores among minority passengers have improved by 18%, Gregory noted. "Not perfect, but moving in the right direction." Before leaving, Marcus asked about Patricia Miller, the woman who had taken his seat that day. Gregory sighed. "She's no longer a customer. After her identity became public, she received threats and had to change her phone number. Her employer put her on leave and eventually she resigned. Last I heard, she was moving to another state." Marcus felt no satisfaction in hearing this. The goal had never been to punish one person, but to change systems that allowed bias to affect decision-making. That evening, Marcus appeared on a national news program to discuss the 6-month anniversary of the incident and the launch of the Equal Space Initiative. The interviewer asked if he ever regretted that the incident had been recorded and shared so widely. "Not at all," Marcus replied. "What happened to me that day was humiliating, but it was also revealing. It showed in clear terms something that many people experience but can't prove. The video made it impossible to dismiss or explain away." "And what about forgiveness?" the interviewer asked. "Have you forgiven the airline staff who removed you from that flight?" Marcus thought carefully before answering. "Forgiveness isn't really the point. This was never about me versus them. It was about exposing a problem that affects many people and working towards solutions. What matters now is the change that comes from it." The interviewer nodded. "Your initiative's motto is equal space for all. What does that mean to you personally?" "It means that everyone deserves to be treated with the same respect and dignity in public spaces," Marcus explained. "Not because of their job title or bank account or how often they fly, but simply because they're human. That's not a radical idea, but it's one we still need to work toward." As Marcus left the studio, his phone buzzed with a message from Lisa Rodriguez. "Just got word that another major airline is signing on with the initiative. The work continues." Marcus smiled. The flight he wasn't allowed to take had ultimately led to a journey far more significant than he could have imagined. What began as a humiliating moment captured on video had become a movement with potential for lasting change. In an unexpected way, being asked to give up his seat had given him a new platform and purpose. The story that had begun with an injustice was transforming into one of accountability, growth, and progress. Not just for one airline or one CEO, but for countless people who would never have to experience what Marcus had faced on Flight 372.